Hello, I'm Renee Kuhn with Meek and Mighty Ministries. Today I invite you on a brief journey through the calendar of God, His appointed times set long ago on day 4 of creation, to guide His people through the ages, set before sin harmed the earth, set before humanity was created, and set by His Holy Majesty. Pastor will uncover some of the meanings behind God's festivals, how they point to Jesus, and how they still speak to us today. You'll also hear incredible mission stories from around the world, stories of faith, miracles, and the power of serving others in practical ways. Before we get started with Pastor Gates today, please remember to check out our previous series on this channel, especially the 7-part series of Justification by Faith, the 1888 message that gives more details of how God's holy appointed times is part of the Elijah message that Alonzo T. and Ellot Waggoner preached, those ancient Bible truths that Ellen White promoted and lifted up. Now, join me and let's listen to what Pastor Gates has to share regarding God's appointed times and other truths of the Holy Scriptures and stories from the mission field, and how we can be part of God's mission today. Saints, the shaking is here to stay until the harvest. We must get ready, get ready, get ready.
Well, I'm glad we have an opportunity to be together again this afternoon. It's nice to share the afternoon. I was admiring the shofar here. I couldn't afford one like that when I went to Israel. That's not a cheap one. That's a very nice one. I bought a little straight one like that, and it was nearly $100. But this one probably is about 3 or 4 or 5. I don't know. Does anybody here remember how much it cost?
This one here, it was donated to our church.
Was it? That's a very, very nice one.
You're right with the prices, though. The good tuned shofars like that, those are kudu shofars. They're in that price range, 3, 4, or 5.
Yeah, and some of them they put silver on them, and they cost about $1,000.
Yeah.
And but I tried a lot of them, and some of them are just showpieces. They don't.
Right.
You can't even hardly blow through it, and the other ones really sound good. So, like you said, if they're tuned nicely and. Oh, you have one. Okay. Does it play okay? Yeah, some of them I tried. I said, this is not a real thing. It's just for hanging on the wall. But I finally got one. I have it there on the mountain, I think, don't I? Anyway, it wasn't a nice one like that. But I can imagine a goat growing 2 of those. That would be something else. That's a grandfather goat, Billy goat.
It's an antelope.
Antelope, is it? Is it? Okay. It's gorgeous. I was meditating on the chart earlier, and I looked at the historic layout of the chart, and you see, some people say, maybe it's like this, maybe it's like that, but we know that chart's correct. That one there. So the probability is that the literal layout of the literal days fulfillment will be identical to that one. Because God doesn't just mix everything over, it's not random. So if that one is confirmed, then probably we'll have this one confirmed, and very soon we'll live through it. And I'm looking forward to the time when when the 10 Commandments are revealed, when God allows the 10 Commandments to come out very soon. And wouldn't that be exciting? To actually see the very literal 10 Commandments. My dad called the director of antiquities in Israel and said, I just watched a video in which Ron Wyatt is handing you some of the items that he found in the cave. And the director said, I don't know who you're talking about. And he said, well, the video shows you, are you Dr. So-and-so? Yes. Are you kind of thin, have a little beard, white hair? Yes. Then you know who I'm talking about. We don't know Ron Wyatt, but you did in the video. So what happens is they just don't want to. to acknowledge, it's very hard on pride when you think that the Ten Commandments and the Ark of the Covenant and everything belongs to you, your people, but your people are not accepted of God. They sent in, a team of guys to try to withdraw it after Ron Wyatt told them where it was, and they all died. And they all had instant heart attacks. And nobody would go in and get them out. They had to bring Ron back to Israel to take out the bodies because nobody would be willing to go down there and try to retrieve them. So I'm sure it's not easy to acknowledge that the very finger of Moses, the very finger of God, and the very Ark of the Covenant that belonged to you, the most sacred article in Jewish history, is untouchable by you, because if you go near there, you die. It goes to show that there is a God and he does not accept their services. I'm sure it's hard. But anyway, the things that Ron Wyatt gave the Director of Antiquities are still on display in the museum. But they just say anonymous gift, But one of these days, God's going to reveal it, and you're going to see it on the channels, the very literal Ten Commandments. And the laws that Moses wrote, that under God's direction, they're still there, just as fresh as they were the day that Moses wrote. That would be a gift beyond comprehension to the Jewish people, but they rejected. And it's very difficult. And another thing that would be difficult would be the blood. The blood that they shed is still there, and it's still alive. And it has half of the chromosomes. No human could create that, and you can't get away from the fact that it's supernatural, and it lends credence to the fact that maybe some Jews individually will accept when they see the evidence. But Ryan is sleeping already, and again, like many of us that have gone to sleep already, many of our friends and family, like Sister Wanda, like you mentioned, they'll wake up one day and see the results of all the work that they left behind. That's what we want. We want to leave behind. We want to leave behind a shower of blessing that our lives have been. Some people leave blessings, some leave curses. We want to leave blessings, and that's why Jesus said. I remember sitting in Israel on the mount there, where it is thought where Jesus spoke Matthew 5, the Sermon on the Mount, and as you look over Lake Galilee and sit up on the side of the thing, and all the fishing nets are sitting out there drying, from all the fishermen that bring their nets out. And then as we imagine Jesus sitting there, and he says, "You are the salt of the earth, but if the salt has lost its savor, it is henceforth good for nothing. Wherewith shall it be salted? It is therefore good for nothing but to be cast out and trodden under the feet of men. Ye are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hid. Neither do men light a candle and put it under a bushel, but on a candlestick, and it giveth light unto the whole house. Let your light therefore so shine before men, that they may see your good work and glorify your Father which is in heaven." That's what God wants to make of all of us: salt to savor and a light to light. But it's something that God does through us. And it's His light, because we don't have any light. It's His light. In 1980, I graduated from college, and I made a flight to the first General Conference session that I have ever been to. That was in Dallas. And I flew to Cleburne in a Cessna 210 Centurion with a bunch of college kids. We flew out there, and it was the first time that Russian delegates were allowed to come. It was quite impressive to talk to them and hear their story of how for so long communism would not allow them to leave the country. I learned my first Russian words, how to say thank you and you're welcome and happy Sabbath, bon appetit, good eating and so on. Priятного аппетита. It was quite an impressive story, but I never missed a general conference after that till 2015 was the last one I went to. You meet all your friends from all around the world, they're all there, and it's such a thing. But unlike all the previous general conferences sessions, I didn't go to my booth. We had three booths. I didn't go to those booths to talk to people like I normally do. The Lord told me, stay inside of the stadium and just listen. I said, but Lord, I got bunches of people that want to talk to me out there. Stay here and listen. And I did leave for a few minutes. I went to the bathroom, which is outside the stadium. On one of those passages, they have toilets. And as I was there, some people said, we need to talk to you. I said, well, can you wait till I go to the toilet? I'll be right out. And they said, okay. They waited for 45 minutes because when I got inside, a line formed inside. People wanting to talk to me, and I didn't come out of the toilet for 45 minutes, but they were still there. They were probably wondering what happened to me. But one guy said, aren't you David Gates? I need to talk to you. Okay, well, just a minute. And finally, we talked 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And finally, I made it back in, and that's the year, 2015, when two important subjects came up. One important subject was changes to our fundamental beliefs. Two of the changes, of course, into the church manual as well, but they were not positive changes, generally speaking. I didn't pay a lot of attention to it, except to note that church boards used to have authority on what happens in that church. And that authority has been taken away, and basically no church board meetings without a pastor present, and the pastor has the final word, regardless of what the church board votes. But the most important thing was they were dealing with the spirit of prophecy and the imminent coming of Jesus, which we've always believed. The changes that were suggested would remove the word imminent, which means any day, very soon, very, very soon, urgency, to soon, which means it could be my grandchildren and great-grandchildren. Also, the word, the description of the spirit of prophecy, the writings of Ellen White, instead of being a constant source of truth, light and truth, take it out completely and just say, speaks with prophetic authority. So if it's not a source of light and truth, then it's not inspired anymore. I have to give credit to the vice president who was presiding the meeting, that he gave plenty of time to the delegates to discuss it. It wasn't done sleight of hand. It wasn't done like other times I've noticed they do sleight of hand. For example, if you think you're going to get a negative vote, you table it for another time. This happened in Toronto when they were discussing trying to make it very easy to get a divorce and remarry without too much of a problem in the church. We've always considered adultery to be a serious problem that requires disfellowshipping and rebaptism. They wanted to make it easy so you could have adultery, get a slight slap on the hand, get remarried, and continue on without too much of a problem. They discussed it for 3 days, and they realized the delegates from South America, Inter-America, and Africa were not in favor of facilitating divorce and remarry too easily. So they realized they were not going to get the vote they wanted. So they tabled it instead of taking a vote. And then they told all the North American and European delegates, the South Americans and Africans are always late. So come in at early, before the South Americans get there. At 8 o'clock, prayer, boom, took a vote, it was approved. By the time the South Americans came in, it was already too late. That's sleight of hand. But this one wasn't. On the discussion, they discussed it fully. Pastor Doug Batchelor and others defended, please, pled, do not change it, do not leave it alone. After everybody had their say, they took a vote, and I was very surprised to see that approximately 3/4 of all the delegates supported the decision to change those two basic fundamental beliefs. So it wasn't something that was passed lightly. It was well discussed, and it was approved by the majority. Now, what does that mean? That means that if the highest authority in the church makes a decision, then it should be binding on all the church worldwide. That's what it means. The highest authority. It wasn't done by a few men. It was done by the whole representatives of the world body. Even God accepts those decisions. When the Sanhedrin made a choice to reject the Messiah, God accepted that choice, didn't he? Jesus wept, but he still accepted it. If only thou hadst known, Jesus said. But they didn't know. And at sundown that night, as Jesus overlooked Jerusalem, the last rays of the setting sun would close the door to Israel, and this certain destruction was assured. And so when the General Conference took that vote, I think very few people noticed the change. I published it. I immediately wrote about it. And even some heads of universities that I talked to, they did not realize the change had been made. So I showed them from the General Conference website, the new wording, and I said, grab the fundamental beliefs off your shelf. Compare them to last year. I didn't know. It was done in open, but it made a tremendous difference. So the question is, now, if you were the pastor of a church, and the corporation makes a decision, the corporate body, the highest authority in the corporation makes a decision, are you as an employee of the corporation expected to obey? If you work for IBM, if you work for Microsoft, if you work for Walmart, and the board of directors made a decision, what do you do as a manager of a local Walmart? You have to obey. It's the corporation. The board of directors is the highest authority. When they make a decision, all the managers are expected to follow. So, in defense of the pastors, I would say that they are expected to follow the line and decisions made at that corporate body. The problem is, it's wrong. So what are your choices? Keep your mouth shut, follow the error and keep your job, or resign. Those are your only choices. Or you can keep on going and get fired, which a lot of them have. You've noticed a lot of pastors have gotten fired for quoting spirit of prophecy. On the other hand, quoting the spirit of prophecy as an authority in the corporate church is no longer following the guideline. In defense of the pastors who don't want to quote a spirit of prophecy, they're following the guideline. But that'll get them lost. Unfortunately, following the guidelines, how can you consider yourself the remnant people of God if you no longer have the spirit of prophecy? You can't. And if you don't believe in the imminent coming of Jesus, how can you truly be an Adventist? You're not. You're just another Christian who keeps the seventh day, but you don't believe in the imminent coming of Jesus. That's why, as I look at the judgment of the living, I believe that from 2015, a shaking was taking place in the church. And people are making decisions. Amen. And a friend of mine, who some of you know, a black pastor, independent ministry, very good friend, was a good friend, he still is a good friend, but when I told him I thought there was a shaking and a judgment happening in the church, he decided to part ways with me. No, the judgment of the living begins at the Sunday law. True. The official judgment of the living, of the people, but something has to happen in the church before the Sunday law. Amen. Because when the Sunday law happens, the door closes for those who would not enter, but it's yet open to those that have never heard. So, there has to be a shaking, because these 10 virgins either have oil or do not have oil before the crisis hits. So they've already chosen sides, right? You've been preparing with oil and praying, you're on this side. You're careless and indifferent, you're on this side. So there's a separation process happening even before the door closes. But when the door closes, then there's no way to change sides anymore. And so I want to say that the salvation in the church today is an individual choice. It's not a corporate choice. Truly, I mean, Israel corporately was the people of God, but individuals, broke and were punished and were lost. But when Israel rejected its position as the people of God, then it was left to an individual choice. I believe we've crossed that line as well. I believe that the official denomination has good people in it, just like any congregation, but that the corporation can no longer speak for the people of God, because they have chosen to reject the spirit of prophecy and the imminent coming of Jesus, which means they have joined with Rome in many things, and they just joined the United Nations. So they are planning to support, and they did a support with the injection. What's the word in English they use for pinchazo? Without using that word. The jab. Yeah. In Spanish they say the pinchazo, the jab in English. When they supported that, and even though Dr. Conrad Vine has very clearly laid it on the line, asking for liberty of conscience so that every member can decide, don't force it on them. Innumerable deaths and injuries have resulted from that, and leave it to each individual church member what their conscience says. They have not chosen to accept that way. In fact, by joining the United Nations recently, they pretty well have set themselves on a course where they cannot turn around very easily anymore. A big ship, we just sang that if your anchor holds. Somebody who knows shipping and boats wrote that. In airplanes you don't cast anchors. It doesn't mean too much to pilots to cast an anchor. But if you're out on the seas, the anchor means everything, right? If you're going to get carried away, or the big waves are going to toss you around and turn you sideways and flip you over. So a big ship going down, I saw a big ship coming up the Amazon River one time. A big cruise ship. And I thought, boy, it can't go too far without getting itself in trouble. Because as the river gets more narrow and more narrow and more narrow, what's a big ship going to do to turn around? You know, you can't, I can just imagine all the passengers looking as the captain's trying to maneuver, and suddenly mud. No, a big ship doesn't turn around easily. And even if you're out on open sea, to turn around, you said you were in the Navy. Those big aircraft carriers, they require a big space to turn around. You get one of those little, what do you call those little destroyers, not destroyers, but the little tinier ship that has guns, a gunboat. They can turn on a dime, right? The church is a big ship. And it's been going down a certain path for quite a few years. Now try to turn around. Reverse your position. It's time for the loud cry. Preach the three angels' message. We can't. It's no longer possible for the denomination to preach a three angels' message, because they would have to disconnect from all of the connections that they have been laying for 50 years. What are you going to tell United Nations? The latter rain just came, and we have to start preaching against Rome. And Rome, excuse me, I know we've gone to all your meetings. I know you've opened the door for us. I know we gave you a gold medal. But you know what? We can't do that anymore, because we're now going to tell the whole world, you are Babylon and you're fallen. It's not going to happen. And all the young theologians that have been trained in pastoral ministry, what are you going to do? Retrain them again? All the conference and union presidents that grew up with certain theology, you're going to tell them that they were wrong? No. So I believe that as Seventh-day Adventists, we have reached the position where we're now individually saved. Because only faithful people of God can carry out the message. You have to have the spirit of prophecy. You have to be commandment keeping and have the spirit of prophecy to be God's remnant people. And present truth has to be part of your daily nutrition. Present truth is not the same for every generation. In Jesus' time, present truth was the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Jesus said that in Matthew 10. He said, do not go to the Gentiles. Do not go to the Samaritans. Go to the lost sheep of Israel and tell them the kingdom of heaven is at hand. They didn't know. Sanhedrin wasn't watching. They were busy running the country, and they did not know the Messiah had arrived. So the present truth for that time was the kingdom of heaven has now arrived. What do you think present truth is for today? Babylon has fallen will be the loud cry message.
Image of the beast.
Image of the beast will be part of the loud cry message. The three angels' messages. Okay, correct. And for Adventists, because we haven't gone to the world with that message yet, even though we're doing a little bit, but after the loud cry, after the latter rain, the loud cry is going to go out. That's going to be the message for those that never heard. But what is the present truth for Adventists today? Prepare to meet your God would be a good way to summarize it. And how do you prepare? With oil in your lamp, putting away, earnestly seeking to put away all worldliness and anything that does not reflect God's character. Asking Him to do for us, studying prophecy, understanding the times. Because most people don't. How can you say the imminent coming of Jesus is not, coming of Jesus is not imminent if you understand the times? It means they don't understand the times. And you're forming alliances with the enemy. Well, how in the world is God going to get married to a church that is sleeping with a prostitute? He can't. These are my people. Really? My people is sleeping with a prostitute? The whore of Babylon? No, it's not going to happen. So we have to do a special work. So present truth today, and all over, I want to encourage you, all over the world there's groups just like you, just like us. All over the world. There's no doubt that God almost has 144,000 or more ready. Very soon, all He's still waiting, holding the winds a little longer. Once He releases those winds, we're going to see things happen. And I'm encouraged, I'm grateful to God that we kind of went through the fire about 13 years ago, 12 years ago. Because now it's easy. We got hit head on by administration in 2013. Shut down everything. Shut down the TV stations. Shut down the orphanages. Shut down the schools. Shut down the aviation programs. But I thought we were going to work together. No, we didn't come to work together. We came for you to obey orders. And, excuse me a minute. I offered my services so that we could work together. I know, but that division president doesn't want you and doesn't want... Well, let's sit down together and find out how we can do it better. No, we're not going to sit down together, and we're not going to work together. You're going to obey what we tell you. But you're about to cut down a good tree. And how do you know a good tree? It has good fruit. The fruits are good. The president told me, wherever you work, the church grows. I know you love the church, you're doing it, but you got a lot of enemies. Well, let's sit down together and see how we can make it better. No, we're not going to sit down together. You're just going to obey what we tell you. You're going to close down. So I said, well, I have a board too. You have a board, I have a board. We're all going to work together. The president of OCI, the president of Wildwood, the president of Eden Valley, the ex-president of Eden Valley, the president of Lower Brook Academy, my dad and myself. There's 4 ministers on the board and administrators. And I said, we have a lot of experience and they're respected men. And I said, we'll discuss it. Unanimously was, we're not going to close down. Nobody's ever heard of such a thing. Closing down doesn't solve any problems. But sometimes I do things that maybe I think it's a sense of humor, but I do things that, like I told that rich guy, I'm not going to ask you ever because I don't talk to managers. Sometimes that's insulting to people, but I didn't mean it as an insult, but it shakes them up a little bit. Well, I said, just a minute. My wife and I were sitting there, and I told the secretary of the general conference and the vice president, just a minute, I have to talk to Satan a minute. You're going to do what? No, don't be worried. I just have to ask him a question. I said, Satan, I have a question for you. What do you want God's people to do? Close down everything? Or go into the farthest corners of the earth and open up and open up and open up new work? What do you want? Satan says close down everything. And what are you asking me to do? Whose side are you on anyway? See, I was just trying to contrast, right? But the truth is, God wants us to go into every corner of the earth, every nation, kindred, tongue, and people, and let them know Jesus is coming soon, get ready. I have a young Cuban man who came to help us in Bolivar, Tennessee, and it's on one side of the car it says, Cristo viene muy pronto. ¿Estás listo? And on the other side of his car it says, Jesus is coming very soon. Are you ready? And I thought, well, that's very nice. He's everywhere he drives, people are. That's a very good sign to carry around in his car, And that's our message, is to get ready ourselves and get other people ready as soon as possible. And it's going to be more difficult than we can imagine, but it's going to go to all the world. Everybody's going to hear it. I want to talk about some practical aspects of mission service, because sometimes we forget it's not just theoretical. I mean, the rubber has to hit the road somewhere, right? You can talk about all the theory, but there's some practical issues, and I want to mention some characteristics, practical characteristics for wannabe missionaries. And I'm going to invite my wife up in a minute, and she can share some of the feminine side of what she sees is needed for missionaries. But I'm going to start by saying, today, let me quote my mechanic, one of the mechanics that does maintenance on our airplanes down in Florida. He's an old geezer. When he dies or quits working, people are going to cry all across the nation, because he knows airplanes, and sometimes he's the only one you can trust to do the best job. Well, I mean, there's other people, I'm sure, I don't know who they are, but he's one of that. Once he closes shop, there's going to be a lot of sad people. But he said, I get a lot of young mechanics here. They graduate from school, and they don't want to work. They come here, they want a job, but they don't want to work. And that's the problem I have in the mission field. I get people, Uncle David, I want to work with you so much. I've been dreaming of working with you. You have? You really want to work? You want to lay brick? You want to build? You want to clean airplanes? You want to turn a wrench? You want to do evangelism? What? And you know, a lot of people come today, but they never grew up working. They grew up looking on their telephone. The people that are 35 and over probably know a lot more about work than those that are 20 and under, or 25 and under. They're called millennials. They gave them that name. But the truth is, today's generation generally hasn't grown up working. Now, I know in Arkansas here, you live on a farm, you know what it is to work. But that's not the average person. The average person grew up in a city, sitting around, going to school, coming back, and sitting all afternoon. One of the practical aspects about mission work is, if you're going to get in a canoe, you have to row. You have to. Otherwise, everybody else has to row harder. We had a couple of Cuban doctors that came to work with us. They just wouldn't leave their house. But didn't you come here to work? Yeah, but we're not feeling good. Well, I mean, that's good for 1 month or 1 week, but 2 months? 3 months? You know, you don't come to church, you don't go to the clinic, you don't do visitation, and not only that, you want my wife to bring you breakfast, lunch, and supper. So I called them and I talked to them, and I asked my wife in front of them, is your life easier or harder since they got here? Much harder. Thank you, but we didn't ask you to come to make our life harder. We asked you to come and help, and you said you wanted to help, but instead you made our life more difficult. Now we have more work than we had before instead of less. I tell the young people, I worked for the denomination 30 years. I worked in 3 unions as department director, and I always had the support of my administration. I have no complaints. I got treated very well. I taught at Caribbean Union College. I taught for Andrews University in graduate school. God's given me a wide variety. A nurse in our Adventist hospitals, pilot, hospital administrator, director of computer services, ADRA director, communication director. You can see the wide variety of experiences over the 30 years. But you get to learn a lot of things. But I always had the support of my administration, and I said, my job is to make my administration's life easier. If I complicate their life, they don't need more complications. Whoever your boss is, make his or her life simpler. If they come to me, David, we got a problem. You know what? The light bulb in that room is not working, and we don't know if it's the circuits or the light bulb. Don't worry about it anymore. Problem solved. Just leave it with me. They just drop it. Problem solved. So you can see in summary what I'm talking. If you have somebody that solves problem and you can just delegate it, you take care of it, done deal. Man, I can't live without that guy. If that guy weren't here, my life would be so much more difficult. You understand? So when missionaries come, what's their task? Their task is to pick up the load, help carry it, and make the load lighter for those that are in charge. Life is already complicated, make it simpler. And so if you do that, you'll never be out of a job, because everybody needs help. Now that doesn't mean you don't have your own ministry to do, but when you first start, young people, they work under somebody else. Eventually, you'll be in charge, and you'll need other people to help you. But the guy in charge is the one who carries the load and needs help. And so that's our biggest need, is for people who know how to work and are willing. I don't do that. I only fly airplanes. I don't clean airplanes. So now we got to find a missionary who's only willing to wash airplanes. How's that? The pilot's not willing? You know, I don't change the oil on an airplane. I only fly them. I said, you act like you're a commercial pilot. All you do is the plane ready? Yes. I'm just saying we need people who do everything, willing to do. But I don't know how to do it. We'll teach you. Are you willing? I'm willing. Okay. So you can learn. And that's one of the practical aspects. The spiritual side is, of course, the most important. But if you don't have that, and you don't love the Lord, and you don't care about that, it's a disaster. We had a young boy, 16 years old, said, I want to be a missionary. I said, we don't accept minors unless you come with your parents. Can I come with my older cousin? How old is she? About 20. Yeah, she's going to be responsible. We don't have time to be a parent for you. But if she can be responsible for you, no problem. So they came. And I thought it was a good combination. But pretty soon she was saying things like, when I used to work with the drug traffickers before, we used to have parties and they were so much fun. There was plenty of money. We'd have drinking and other things, and we had a lot of fun. She was always talking positive about all the parties yet in the world. So I called her one time and I said, it doesn't sound like you're converted even. It sounds like you had so much fun in the world, you're telling everybody that the Christian life isn't fun at all compared to what you had before. Oh no, I just made it up. I was lying. I never did that. Oh, so now you're a liar on top of it. And I said, you know what? You're not giving a positive influence here. Your younger cousin, he's working pretty good. But you're a negative influence. And so I had to leave on the airplane, so I told my son-in-law, she needs to go home. Both of them, unfortunately, need to go home. And he had a soft heart. I said, send her home right away. He didn't. Shortly, she was in bed with one of the other missionaries. And so we lost 2 people instead of 1. So the spirit, you have to be committed to the Lord. Yes, we want committed Christians. But the most important part after that is willingness to work and willing to carry the weight of the be responsible. That's hard to find today. In fact, I tell my wife quite often, I've lost my faith in the human race. It's not that there's nobody out there. It's just hard to find somebody that really knows how to work. We have a farm boy from Argentina, and he grew up on the farm. He drove for about 2 days to get there. The day he got there, he said, Uncle David, what are you doing? I said, the tractor drove through my backyard and it smashed my sewer pipe that are buried under the ground. I said, and so now I need to replace those pipes. Forget it. You go on with your work, I'll do it. Boom, done deal. Hey, I like farm people. They can fix anything. They can do anything. You know what? You know what he's doing now? He's flying an airplane. He's a pilot. He's flying our 2 planes in Argentina, and he's putting up radio stations throughout the whole country. He sends me pictures from, he's on top of a tower 200 feet high, and he's putting them up everywhere without a license. Because in Argentina, you can, if you're below a certain broadcast power, you don't need a license. So he's putting them up all over the place. And he has a massive radio network, and he works, and he fixes, and he does things. And I go, man, they don't make them like that anymore. But there are so many good people. They just hard to come by, you know. And we pray for that all the time. Becky, maybe you can come up and share with us some of the things in your experience. I gave her a little heads up on that one, but she doesn't like to speak in public too often. She got her foot up. They took out a cyst out of her foot, and she's still. Just share some of the experiences. What? Want me to tell you what she said? My mind is a blank. Well, let me ask you some questions. That helps.
That's better.
Ask me. Becky's in charge of the medical work. Her dream, her first love is taking care of people. She's a nurse, and she loves taking care of people. But she has physicians, and she has dentists, and physical therapists, and nurses, and other young people that are learning, training. But she doesn't have the energy anymore. I've kept her away from every day being at the clinic in the morning, because at her age, that's not her job anymore to have to be at work all day long. Her job is to kind of lead out, inspire, direct, and people need advice. So tell us a little bit about what you do, what kind of patients you have, and what kind of staff you have. First, we'll start there.
Okay. Well, I never studied administration, so I don't claim to be an administrator, and that's what's kind of difficult. But, you know, I saw my mother and my mother-in-law, and they had little home clinics, and they saw so many patients. My mother was actually keeping a record of all her patient visits, and she had more than 27,000 patient visits the 7 years they were there in Pucallpa. And that didn't include when they were in Africa, and they were in Tanzania, and they were in Zambia. And then they were with us in Bolivia, and they were with us in Guyana. And I think my mom was more a natural. And I guess I was hoping I could be more like that. And my mother-in-law, too, she was just so wonderful. And she delivered hundreds and hundreds of babies. But so it wasn't so easy for me. I started a little clinic there in Bolivia. When we bought our land, the whole area was just cattle. It was just kind of nature, you know. We had monkeys and sloths and all kinds of other little animals living there. It was just really nice. But a couple years after we got there, then one of the cattlemen sold his cattle, and he just started making lots. And before we knew it, we had a whole village, and I think there's several thousand people there living now. And the majority are very hard-working people. They're not really very educated, but very sweet people. And so we decided we would open a little place. My idea was to have a room about this size and make 2 rooms, one for dental and one for medical, and then the other would be kind of like a community center. And we were hoping to just teach the people a lot of things. That it didn't really work out so much that way. I mean, we did have one doctor that came and helped us for a while, and we had a dentist, and all of those people need a lot of help in those 2 areas. But so many of them are such hardworking people, and they work early. They go to work early in the morning, and they're basically gone all day. So it hasn't been, in my opinion, a big flourishing clinic. But then we just started making it more like a wellness center, you know, to teach people how to change their estilo de vida, their lifestyle. And so we have had, that's mainly the kind of patients that we're getting now. And it's been very special. I've really enjoyed it because you have them there for about 10 days, most of them. And so you really get to know them, and you can really talk to them about the Lord. And that's something that I've really enjoyed. But we've had many very sad cases, you know, people that have cancer and they're just in the last stages of it, and I do believe in prayer. I do believe God can do miracles, but many of them have ended up dying later. But then the Lord showed me that we have helped many of these people to prepare for that event. So even though it's sad, and some of my workers, because I have a lot of young workers, you know, and it's been a little discouraging for them sometimes, where they feel like we've worked so hard for this person, and then they end up dying, you know. But for example, we had one young lady that about the time she started studying medicine, she got involved in like Ouija board and all that kind of thing, and then she just made a big mess of her life. And by the time she came to see us, she had pancreatic cancer. She was no longer talking to her mom. She had left her husband and her son, and she really wanted to die. In fact, while she was there, and since she's a medical person, she knows how to do it. And I don't remember why she had heparin in her room, but she gave herself a massive dose of heparin, and then she cut her wrists. And we just prayed and prayed for her, and she didn't die. She didn't die at that point. And in fact, David came. We asked him to come, and he helped us stitch it up. And but you know, she was so touched by the love she felt there. And I'm just so thankful she reconciled with her mom and with her husband and her son. They were all there. But sadly, she just continued to progress with the cancer. And she just became skin and bones. But she just thanked us. She said, you know, I feel so happy. I feel like now I'm ready to go. I'm glad the Lord didn't let me die when I tried to take my life. And yeah, about a month later, she did pass away. She was from Peru. Her family had come. Her two brothers also came. And we had a wonderful time together. And we actually had her funeral in our studio. The first funeral we've had there. But you know, her parents were just so grateful. And that encouraged me. And then about the same time, we had another very sweet lady that she had just become an Adventist. And I can't remember what cancer she had. I think it was of the uterus. But she also was, we could tell that she was going downhill, but she just enjoyed her time so much with us. And she and her husband had lived together for years and years. And then when they became Adventists, you know, they got married by the state, but she had never had a church wedding. And she told us when she was getting ready to leave, she was going to leave on a Thursday. And she said, there's one desire. I just wish so badly that I could have a church wedding. And we said, well, if you want to stay a few more days, we'll do that for you. And so with just a little bit of money, her husband gave us a little bit of money. We went down to, you know, there's a lot of used clothes places. And we bought her a nice little dress. She wanted a blue dress. She said, that shows loyalty. And so we got her blue dress and a little white vest-like thing. And the children, like my granddaughter and my assistant's 3 kids, and then her sister was also working with us as receptionist at the time, and she had a little daughter. And so they all dressed up, and they were the, you know, little bridesmaids, and the little boy brought the Bible. And we made a watermelon cake, and the truth is we just had a really nice time. And her family came, and they weren't Adventists, and they were just so touched by what we were doing for her. And you know, she was just so happy. She said, this is just my dream come true. And of course David officiated, and I played the piano, and we just had such a lovely little ceremony. And then we took her in the plane back to Cochabamba, where her home was. It was probably, I don't know, an hour, 2-hour flight, I don't remember.
A little over an hour.
A little over an hour. And oh, she and her husband were just so excited about that. It would have been very, very hard for her to travel by bus back to her home. And all of that, you know, just touched their hearts so much. And so I realized that even though sometimes we have certain ideas of how we want to work for the Lord, sometimes it doesn't really turn out that way, but the Lord knows whose heart He is touching, and so that has made me very happy, and we have seen many people who have been able to turn their lifestyle around and are so grateful. And I've had many people tell me later, you know, this is just one of the best experiences of my life, and I want to send more of my family. We just had one older lady that she has been watching our TV station for several years now. She wasn't Adventist, but she just felt impressed to be putting aside tithe and offering. And I remember I think it was a Friday, wasn't it? And she showed up with her daughter-in-law, and we were kind of like, oh, we have so much to do, and don't really have time for this. But and she said, well, this is a lady that's been watching your station, and she has a little gift for you. And oh, what a lovely person. And she just had such a beautiful testimony to share with us. And both she and her daughter-in-law are having health issues. And so we told them, well, just come, you know, and you don't need to worry about any expenses. You've already given us such a beautiful gift. It was a real blessing for us, because at that time we were trying to renew our licenses for the TV, and that was 1 month where I'd hardly gotten any donations for the clinic, and we charge a pittance, and if they can't afford that, we don't even charge them that. But I have just seen the Lord over and over and over again providing just at the right moment. And anyway, they just had such a wonderful time there. I was there at the same time because they had operated my foot, and so I stayed there for a couple days just to get some treatments myself, and it was really nice. Felt a little baby, but I've kind of started leaving the health work to my assistant. She's young and full of energy, and that is in Santa Cruz. And it takes 4 hours to get to the mountain where we are right now. We're hoping to build another wellness center there and sell the one that we have in town, because the city is just surrounding us now, especially in this last few months. The other neighbor that also had cattle is just selling off all his land, and they've put a big cell phone tower just right next to our studio, and we just want to get out of there. So, you know, bless his heart, David for many months would be up on the mountain, and I would stay to help with the medical work. And that got old after a while too, and he said, no, we want to be together, and we're getting old. I'm almost 70, so I'm ready to retire. So I went up to the mountain, and then we see, oh, we have all these kids, and they need a school. And so now that's my next emphasis, is how to make a little Madison school for these kids. And I have to admit, I'm having a lot of fun. I just love teaching them. They're the sweetest little kids, and we're teaching them English and music, and we're trying to make it very practical. We were making bread the other day. We've built several greenhouses up on the mountain, and so we take the kids to help in the greenhouses. We want to do that one day a week. We're teaching them about anatomy and physiology, and trying to teach them from that tender age the principles of health. And we're planning a mission trip, because the one family is from Tarija, and so we would like to take the kids to that area, and we can do like a feria de salud.
Health fair.
Health fair. Sometimes English just doesn't come to my mind anymore. You have to forgive me. but teaching the kids so that they can help in this health fair. And anyway, that's a lot of fun, and I'm just feeling sad right now because I'm going to be here in the States this whole month, and then we're going to be in Guyana for another month, and then we might be going to Mexico and the Caribbean, and then Europe. So I'm going to be gone for like 4 months, and my poor kids, I don't know what they're doing. But anyway, when I get back, that's what I want to do. I don't know what else you want me to say.
That's fine. Thank you. Thanks for sharing.
You're welcome.
Nice to hear stories. I like the story of in China. What was a famous missionary to China? What's his name? Hudson Taylor and his wife. They worked in China for so long. He would speak in English and she would translate into Chinese. And so everybody assumed he didn't speak Chinese. And he would just preach in English and she would translate. And then at a given signal, boom, they would switch. And he would preach in Chinese and she would translate to English. Talking about medical work and institutions, I want to talk about 2 hospitals and a university. I went to Guam. Guam is a U.S. territory on the other side of the world. I had camp meeting 2 years, and the Adventist hospital said, "You've been a hospital administrator. Come meet with our staff and tell us what we can do to operate in the green, in the blue, in the black." We've been operating in the blue. Out of the blue. We've been operating in the red for too many years. And so I said, yes, I could probably figure out some business strategies, but I have a question. How many free services do you offer your neighbors? Free services? I said, if the government tried to close you down, would your neighbors come and defend you, or would they just let you go? Probably they would just let us. I said, you're not serving your neighbors. You're trying to make money. And like any business, they'll let you just flounder by yourself. I said, why don't you offer free gynecological on Monday, free orthopedics on Tuesday, free pediatrics on Wednesday, and offer different specialties on different days and take care of those who don't have any money. If somebody tries to close you down, those people who receive those services, man, they'll fight tooth and nail to keep you. And besides, the Bible says, given it shall be given unto you. You know what? They had one more one more request. We can't find enough doctors. We offer them the best. We tell them, we'll pay you good salaries, we'll give you benefits, you get to go on vacation, and we still can't attract physicians from the U.S. There's your mistake. Why? You're a mission hospital. Don't offer them benefits. Tell them, we need physicians who want to serve in a mission field. You're going to be required to go to the islands. It's going to be hard work, little pay. But you're required to do this, and we only want physicians that want to sacrifice. If you want comfort, stay in the States. No kidding. That's how you get. You want the best? You got the Marines. How is that? What do the Marines say they want?
Well, all of the Navy.
Yeah, I know, but what you're military, so what do they say?
A few good men.
A few good men. That's all you want. Few good doctors. Tell them the rest of you stay in the States. We only want the few and the best. Guess what? I came back a year later. They had good staff, and they said for the first time in 30 years, we're operating in the black, and we offer free services every day. Are you getting the idea? The more you serve, the more you receive. Be there to help, not to make it's not a business. It's a ministry. The next hospital that I want to talk about was Jellicoe, Tennessee. Adventist Health Systems. They asked me, that hospital administrator was from Romania. And he asked me to come and have a week of prayer. So I went to the Jellicoe Adventist Hospital, and I had a week of prayer with all the staff. And he said, what would you recommend that we make changes to our hospital? I said, well, if I came to your hospital, would I see signs around the wall to tell me that you're a Christian hospital? If you went to a Buddhist hospital, you would see the sayings of Buddha everywhere. Where are the sayings of Christ? Oh, so we should put memory verses everywhere? Well, you're a Christian hospital or not? Yes. Well, then put Christ sayings around. On the elevator, right there. When you're standing on the outside waiting for the elevator, right there. On the walls of the patients. Okay, he wrote that down. What else? I said, a patient is facing surgery. They might die. On the table. This is a serious issue. But they want to watch TV. They pick up the TV and they go like that. How many of Satan's channels do you have on your cable? What do you mean? Well, are they going to watch an evil movie? Or are you going to have only Christian stations that uplift? Or are you going to give Satan a chance to get their mind right before they die? Let's go to the back room. There was a rack filled with all kinds of channels. And they all go on cable to get multiplexed together and go out to the patient rooms. This one goes out, that one goes out, movie channel goes out, that one goes out, that one goes out, that one goes out. Keep this one, and this one, and that one. What else? And I said, the medical director, the director of nurses, and the administrator, they meet together every morning in the chapel, and they pray for the whole list of patients. Wow. You know, they started doing that. And he said, we have another problem. We're really fighting a tight budget. Well, do it God's way and let him deal with it. He called me and he said, 1 week before we got audited, we were short. Oh no, one other thing. Then are you serving the neighbors? When the neighbors come in and they need immediate surgery, appendectomy. Before we can operate, you need to make financial arrangements with accounting. You got to pay first before we save your life. I said, is that what you do? Yes. I said, no, the patient is more important than the money. As soon as they come in, don't worry about that. We'll work out the finances later. Right to the emergency, right? Boom, get them to the OR. Take care of them right away. What about the finances? First you deal with the patient. Now work out the finances. Wow, that's a different way of thinking. He did it. 1 week before the audit, we're $1 million short. 2 days before the audit. This is the state of Tennessee. We've made a mistake on our accounting. We're sending you a check for $1 million. The next year, 2 weeks before the audit, we're short another $1 million. Bam. We've changed the policies. We're doing this and the other. You get a subsidy of $1 million. They were always in the black after that. Then I call, and I say, you don't by any chance have a discount for missionaries, do you? My wife has an inguinal hernia, and she needs a surgical repair. Let me talk to the surgeon. How much would you charge Pastor David Gates to have surgery on his wife? What does she need? Inguinal hernia repair. They cut you open and they put a little, it looks like a mosquito net in there. They tie it together, and then the tissue grows around the mosquito net, and then now it doesn't pull apart. The little net stays inside the tissue, and it keeps the hernia from coming out again. If I charge David Gates, what would God do to me? I'm not going to charge him anything. Then the hospital says, well, we're not going to charge anything either. Bring your wife. So they scheduled her for an inguinal hernia repair. And then when we got there, the surgeon said, you know what? I've been negligent. You told me she had an inguinal hernia and needed a surgical repair. But I've never even seen the patient yet, and we scheduled her for surgery. Let me at least take a look at her. He said, that would be the best thing before we go to surgery, right? So he checked her and said, yes, you're right. It's an inguinal hernia repair. That's what we need. I just want to make sure before we go to surgery. So they did it, and I went to the chapel to pray. And in the chapel was the medical director, the administrator, and the director of nurses, and they were praying for the patients. I said, man. And when I got on the elevator, there's a memory verse on the inside. When I was waiting on the elevator, there's a memory verse on the outside. In the patient room, when they came to take her blood, can I pray with you, Mrs. Gates? When they came to take her x-ray, can we pray together? I came to draw your blood. Can we pray together? This is not feeling like a normal business anymore. It's feeling like a ministry. And they started doing well. So Adventist Health Systems came in, they fired him, they threw him out, put somebody in that doesn't even go to church. They took out all the signs. They don't pray with the patients. It lasted 6 months, and they sold the hospital broke. Doesn't that teach you a lesson? It tells you also if you do things right, you're going to get opposition. For once, instead of in the red, they're operating in the black. Things are going well. Yeah, but it's honoring God. It's not a ministry anymore. Get rid of that guy. So they fired him. So the good news is that when you do things right, God's blessing comes. The bad news is human authorities will try to close you down within the church. That's the sad part. And now we're going to talk about a university. I went to Southern Adventist University. My grandfather graduated from Southern Junior College. My dad studied nursing there, even though he studied theology in seminary up in Tacoma Park. But he came back and took nursing later. My mother was a nursing instructor there. Becky and I graduated from nursing at Southern Missionary College. My children also graduated from there. Two daughters. So we've been in the year 2000, I was named Alumnus of the Year for Southern Adventist University. The president said, David, we would like all our students to be like you. Well, that was a big honor. Well, I went to graduation because my nephew was graduating. We went there, and there was 500 graduates. It was kind of like, what do you call it when you think of the past? Nostalgic. It was nostalgic to go back after many years and be at a graduation again. 500 graduates marching down the aisle. Very nice. Then my other nephew, non-Adventist nephew, says, can you come to my graduation? Where is it? Virginia. Liberty University. Sure. So I went up to that one. You know how many people graduated? 50,000. 3 stadiums. Each stadium morning was one graduation, afternoon another graduation. Then I began to say, I don't think we've done very much in education. 50,000 versus 500. Lord, you help me to start 15 academies. But you know what? I wish I'd have started a university. Our young people are going to the world to get a worldly education. When in reality, when they graduate from academy, they need to go right into God's college and learn to be missionaries. Where can you get that? There are some. I think Weimar is doing a good job. Waldwood is probably training good, but there's not a college degree at Waldwood. Weimar is. I couldn't recommend any of the other universities. Yes?
In end of February, starting March, we were invited to go down to our Adventist University in Linda Vista, Chiapas, Mexico, and do a health seminar. They want to start a lifestyle center there, and they wanted us to kick it off with a health seminar for the employees of the university, because they want them to be living the healthy lifestyle to be able to pattern it for those that will be coming for the lifestyle center.
Well, that's excellent.
And so that was a blessing.
Linda Vista had it start with the health message. Right above Linda Vista, there's a place called
That's right,
Yerba Buena.
Yes.
And they've had health work there for a long time.
Yes.
And right above Yerba Buena, there's a town called Pueblo Nuevo.
Right.
I was the last pilot that ever landed there.
Oh, really?
They had a runway that no pilots had used for 20 years, and I landed there with our airplane. And when I left, a few years later, they closed it. So we lived a little further south in Frontera Comalapa, which is where the hospital is.
We were out at Yerba Buena 2 times for 8 months.
You did? Okay.
And my dad built the church there. I don't know if you remember the church with the stone front on it?
Uh-huh.
That's my dad's artwork.
Wow.
He built that in February 1970. Now, next week, we'll be flying back down there to train a bunch of young people to do massage and chiropractics so that they can
Wonderful.
help people there in the country.
Well, since we started 15 academies, we were thinking, where do we recommend our young people to go after they graduate? Not many of them can come to the States, and not many of them can travel all around the world. You need a place to study. But I'm too old to start a university. Lord, you should have told me this 30 years ago. Then I could have gone in working, and getting the graduate permissions and licenses. But I gave it up. But the Lord had a surprise for me. Because a few months later, I get a phone call from a pastor friend of mine. He's Brazilian, living in California, but he's moved back to Brazil now. Hey, David. Yeah. Guess what? He said, you want to be part of a university? What is it? I'm interested. He said, we started Madison University on the principles of medicine. And he said, we're offering 2 degrees, and we already have all the authorizations, and we're offering 2 bachelor's degrees, one in theology and one in natural medicine. He said, you can do it. We have all our doctors all are lined up. It's online, on Sundays only. It's in Spanish and English. And very soon we're going to open Portuguese. And we already have 3,000 students. And they study from all over the world. And you're online 8 hours on Sunday. And it takes 2 years, then your practicals, and you get a bachelor's degree. And we have a special theology degree, bachelor's degree, for non-Adventists. And we already have 300 evangelical pastors taking the course, studying Adventist theology. Probably it's designed, I didn't see all the curriculum, it's probably designed a little less spirit of prophecy, more sola scriptura, because evangelicals don't yet understand the authority of the spirit of prophecy. So, God is blessing and is growing, and we're adding Portuguese. And the president of the Assemblies of God Church in Brazil, which is everywhere, said he had thousands of students ready to join the moment that we have it in Portuguese. It's probably going to be the biggest Adventist university in the world because it's unlimited, it's worldwide. You can study it anywhere, and you can do everything. And you know what? Even though I'm not enrolled, I have students that come up on Sunday to watch it in my living room. I have a bigger screen TV, bigger than the computer screen. And they can sit in my living room and take the course. Or they can do it on their phone, or they can do it on their computer. But they sit in the living room, and so I listen to it. I'm working around in it, coming, going, and I'm listening to what they're saying. man, I love the theology and I love the focus on health. And those doctors, naturopaths, are quoting the spirit of prophecy and quoting scientific articles and this and the other. They're mixing it just fine. God says this, God says that, spirit of prophecy says this. A publication here has taught us this. We know about this from that. And I'm sitting there going, finally a safe place where I can send the students. Amen. So, believe it or not, I'm so thankful to be part of Madison University. I just applied, and I'm trying to work out the paperwork to get, the webpage is now universidadmadison.com in Spanish. That's the webpage, universidadmadison.com. And what? Yeah, .com. No, but I'm going to say that. I just applied for madisonuniversity.edu. But to do that, I have a bunch of paperwork to submit before they give you a .edu extension. Because that's reserved for universities and colleges. And so I'm doing the paperwork right now to get that. Once I get that, it'll be madisonuniversity.edu. At this moment, it's universidadmadison.com. Okay? Right now. But if you want to see, you know how much it costs in Latin America to study at the university? $30 a month. In the States, it costs $150, but it's still cheap. But $30 a month if you're in Latin America. So young people can afford it. And it's good theology, and it's good medicine, and it's according to the spirit of prophecy and the Bible. So I'm thankful to the Lord that even at my age, I get to help start a university. And anybody can do it around the world. And in 2 degrees, in 2 years, plus doing the practical work, you can have a bachelor's degree. Anyway, it's really a wonderful thing, as you see God opening doors. You know, and he led me to Liberty University to look at what God has done for others, and what we're doing is very little compared. Yes, Chris.
Explain how does someone do that university program online and then practical?
Okay. The practical part is when it's time to do the practicals. If you're in South America, we've arranged you come to Bolivia. But we're going to put one in Central America, maybe Nicaragua or Honduras, and maybe one in Mexico, where people can go. But right now, we're just starting, so we have one in Bolivia, one in Nicaragua that we want to put, another one in Brazil, and like that. And you go, and you have to associate with a wellness center or an organization that does that kind of work. And everybody will come there, and the teachers of the university will come to that, and they'll work with you and with the institution. Like you have to have a sanitarium of some kind where you can treat the patients. You can't be out in the field. You have to be at a sanitarium, so you need an organization that does that kind of work to associate with you so that you can do the practicals in their location. But I'm sure here in the States, very soon, we'll have several locations where you can do the practicals, where you can go to that spot, spend a month doing practicals.
Eden Valley or
it could be Eden Valley or Wildwood. I'm more involved in the South American side, but the teaching comes mainly from North America. So since they're in North America, they already have several places lined up, but I haven't, since I'm always coordinating South America, I haven't asked where that is. But that's how you do it. Once or twice a year you go and do practicals, or you do a longer practical in one place once a year. Okay. Yes, Doctor.
Mr. White stated that a very strong agricultural emphasis in Madison College here in Tennessee. Now, how do you do that online?
No, that's the practical part. When you go to the practicals, in Bolivia, we have the medical work, we have the agriculture work, we have evangelism. You do public evangelism, you give Bible studies, you learn how to speak, you learn how to do all those things. You already got the theory. Yeah. Now you got to put it in practice. And the very professors who taught you are there to supervise you, or other associate staff come to help supervise you so you can get the credit for the practicals. It's not so easy as one thinks. It is a little complicated. for us to organize it, because you have to get all your staff together and have a place to work. But once you have the right location that has infrastructure, like what if we get 50 or 100 people coming in for that one event? We got to have places where they all can all sleep. The hard part is just the logistics, but the actual training part is hands-on. To match the theory, now you have the practical part. Some people say, oh, that won't work because people don't come. But if you want the degree, you have to come. I mean, that's it. You can't just do theory. There has to be hands-on. And somehow we have to work it out. And it'll grow. Pretty soon we'll have in many countries locations where people from that country can go. And in every country, eventually we will have spots where you can go to do practicals. It'll make it easier. But we're just growing. We just started a year and a half ago. And it's already 3,000 students. So that gives you an idea. It's not a little tiny thing. It's growing very fast. But thank you. Any more questions on that?
What is the cost of it?
In the U.S., it's $150 a month. In Latin America, 30. Or in third world country, 30. Only Spanish and English, very soon Portuguese. Okay.
Didn't they want to do it in Romanian also? I think they were. Oh, no, that's
No, that's Med Missionary. Med Missionary, brings up a good point though. medmissionary.com is a short course training of specific subjects. Not for a degree, but for training. They have it in English, Spanish, Portuguese, and Romanian. And it's very, very good just to learn short courses on specific areas. My wife did it, and we coordinated in Bolivia for other people. Have you heard of Dr. Joyce? Yes. Yeah. She's been interviewing some people with sensitive issues. Yes. She's the next Conrad Vine. Whenever you deal with real life issues that are serious, you get cancellation fever. So it was David Gates, and then it was others, then it was Conrad Vine, then it's Barbara O'Neill, then it's going to be Dr. Joyce. Because the door is there's no freedom to say what you need to say. If you say uncomfortable things, you get harsh reactions is the right word. Yes?
Did you know that Milton Adams with the Simple Church, have you heard of him? Okay, so it's like a training for how to do home church. Well, I went through his training, and he said that he had to meet with Andrews University because the students are upset to find out that the people that go through this training they're able to baptize, not spending tens of thousands of dollars on education, but they can baptize, they can go into the homes, they're not pastors and they're baptizing. So we went through the training. I know you two went through the training as well. And so Milton Adams is over that, called the Simple Church, and he's under the hot seat too. And the GC asked him, from my understanding, this is from Milton in our last meeting, he was asked not to come, not to have a booth to advertise home church training at, I believe, the GC, the upcoming GC. So that they're keeping the Adventist home church training.
Wasn't it an ASI?
Well, it might have been ASI. Okay, it was ASI. I knew he was asked not to come. But he was told that they would reconvene and think about it in 5 years.
After Jesus comes.
Yeah.
We were ASI members for a long time. But even before they canceled our ASI membership, they would not let us have a booth. So 2 years before they canceled our membership, they refused to let us have it. They let non-members have booths, but they don't let members have booths that they don't like. So eventually, when a GC wrote the letter against our ministry, against myself, saying we don't obey the policy, so therefore they encourage nobody to work with us, then they quit letting us have a booth. I mean, that's when then they canceled our membership, but they never told us. They just canceled it without telling us. So we heard by the grapevine. Anyway, we have a policy of not respecting things, but that's okay. God's work is going to explode across the world, and you know what? You need muscles if you're going to be part of the loud cry. And if you've never gone through a stressor like this, you'll never get muscles. You have to learn to stand up and do what is right regardless. How are you going to lift heavy weights if you can't even lift 10 pounds? So if you can't go through a little persecution and prejudice here, how in the world are we going to go through the great persecution? So we are really blessed when a pastor gets fired or an employee gets fired or whatever happens. Say, thank you, Lord. Now I can follow you all the way. I worked for 30 years, and those were the best years that I can think of. But today, I couldn't do what I'm doing and still be an employee. So I thank the Lord that I retired before all hell broke loose. Today, my conscience would be restricted, and I would not be able to do what I'm doing. So thank the Lord that no more restrictions. Handcuffs off. So let me ask you a question. Do you think in a loud cry, we're going to be standing in line? Thousands are hearing the message. They want to be baptized, and you're going to write to the general conference and say, could you send a pastor to baptize these people? No. Like the disciples, you're going to baptize them on the spot. Right? That's what's coming. So I'm not surprised that they're doing that because it's about control. It is about control. I will talk to you a little bit about the Free Church, what they went through. The Free Seventh Adventist Church, are you familiar with them? I heard of them once, and they invited me to speak at camp meetings, so I went to their camp meeting 2 years ago. I spoke at camp meeting, but even before I went to camp meeting, we started a conversation with them. And they sent me all the materials. I want to know who you are. I mean, where do you come from? You know, what's your background? And I became aware that they began right around near the time of Ellen G. White's death, because prejudice in the church against black people increased significantly after she died. When she was still alive, she was always supporting ministry to the black people, to the colored people, and so on. And after she died, it got worse. So black pastors decided to form the Free Seventh Adventist Church in order to be able to give their young people a chance to develop as pastors, to have a job afterward, and to pastor in a church where they couldn't do it in the white church. And so they formed the Free Seventh Adventist Church in I think it's 1912 or 13, something like that. Anyway, they've been in existence ever since, incorporated in California. And they've been faithful to the writings. They've been faithful to our traditional teachings without changing the fundamental beliefs and so on. And their stand on women's ordination and other things, which is another thing. I went to 4 general conference sessions where the world church voted no to women's ordination. And they do it anyway. So I'd like to know who the dissidents are. The dissidents are those union presidents and division presidents that disobey the world church. How can you take a world vote saying no, and they do it anyway? Fire all those union presidents. Fire the division presidents. Right? I mean, excuse me, if your highest corporate body said no, it's no. Do you know what no means? But they do it anyway. So now it's just, so really, they don't care what the world church votes. They're going to do it what they want to anyway. So that's who I call the dissidents. Are that you're an employee, you're on payroll to the denomination, but you refuse to obey the vote of the world church. Okay. Anyway, so the Free Seventh Adventist Church was there, and I admired their stand on many things. And in Bolivia and other countries in Peru especially, when they disfellowship you for whatever political reason, not for sin, but I mean if they disfellowship you for, like you, for feast-keeping, or they disfellowship you because you're preaching present through Jesus is coming back, or you use the spirit of prophecy, or you give away great controversies, or you're teaching the health message not to eat meat.
Accepting tithe.
That's not the biggest issue in South America. The biggest issue is do not talk about leaving meat eating. We like our chicken. That's one of the biggest issues. Okay? In fact, I don't remember even them mentioning tithing in South America. That's a North American problem. But boy, the chicken, don't mention that. Don't touch my chicken. When we have a potluck in South America, that would be loaded with chicken there. Okay? So, anyway, when they disfellowship you for these reasons, and then they don't know where to go, and they meet in home churches, they meet here, they meet there, they just feel like orphans because they're not allowed in the other churches anymore. But where do they go? So I said, you're still a Seventh-day Adventist. No, we're not allowed to use a name. Well, then become free Seventh-day Adventist. Write a letter to the church, to the administration, do the application. If you're not going to belong to the Seventh-day Adventist church, then be a free Seventh-day Adventist with freedom to teach present truth and to live the health message. And you know what? It exploded across Peru. In Bolivia, there's about 3 congregations, but in Peru, there's like about 20 now, just in 1 year. It's exploding. But what I wanted to talk to you was that the Seventh-day Adventist Church, Sister White says that some of our leading men are going to publicly in large gatherings teach, not only will they trample on the Sabbath themselves, they will encourage Sunday keeping. That's what Sister White said. And of course they will, because they belong to the United Nations. They're probably going to couch it in another language like, in order not to step on the dragon's tail, just don't go to church on Saturday, do missionary work, and then on Sunday you can meet and talk about what God did for you yesterday. That's already happened here in New Orleans. Yes, sir.
Just from a little insight in my own experience. I was sued some time ago, or attempted to be sued by General Conference, who used the name Seventh Adventist. I said, I'm not going to fight you all, I'm going to change my name. So I changed my name to Sabbath Keeping Advent Believer. Okay, I'm not Seventh Adventist, Sabbath Keeping Advent Believer, so the initials changed. Anyway, to make a long story short, subsequently to that, we heard about this Free Adventist Day movement, and today I'm a member of the Free Seventh Adventist of General Assembly, or General Assembly of Free Seventh Adventists. Now there are 2 such organizations.
Yeah, there's
I'm not
2.
sure which one you're aware of.
Yeah.
The one I belong to is the original one. The second one started afterwards. They stole some articles of incorporation from this and incorporated their own organization. So we were at one time going to be part of both. But one side decided, no, you can't be part of both, either we or nobody else. So we decided to drop them off because we found out from doing some research that they had used false pretenses to get their articles of incorporation. And so we found that it's the wrong thing to do, so we decided, okay, we're going to stay with the General Assembly, Free of that, the General Assembly. So I'm a member of that.
Okay.
And I have more information if anyone wants to know about that. And like you said, you're correct. We believe exactly like
no changes.
Pioneers, exactly what the pioneers believed. And now we're free to use the name Seventh Adventist and use even Mrs. White's writings the way we want to, without having to go to General Conference for permission. So
if you're not aware of it, if you're going to publish Ellen G. White books, you would not have the right to publish Ellen G. White books if it were not for the Free Seventh Adventist. The name Ellen White is a registered trademark.
Yes.
The GC has registered the name Ellen G. White. And so if you want to use and publish her books, you cannot do it if it depended solely on the General Conference. But fortunately, the Free Seventh Adventist Church pre-existed there, but they're grandfathered in to such a point that whenever you publish the book, there's no problem. If the GC bothers you, you just contact the Free Seventh Adventist Church. They give you the right, and they can't say anything. So I'm going to talk about 2 things that happened. One happened in Guam. In Guam, not Guam, sorry, Samoa. If you know, there's the U.S. Samoan Islands, and they belong to the same, basically, area of California. They're closer to the west coast. Then there's the nation of Samoa. The nation of Samoa is an independent nation, but they're neighboring islands, okay? So you have U.S. Samoan Islands and the nation of Samoa. They're just next door to each other. But Samoa decided we do more business with Australia than with U.S. So we would rather be on the same time zone or the same side of the day as Australia and New Zealand. So they changed. You remember the international date line goes like this, and it used to go like this? Well, now it goes like this. U.S. Samoa is on this side, and the Samoan is on this side, the nation of Samoa. Well, guess what? That caused a problem. Because now it's Friday here, and it's Saturday here. Just down the road, you can say. Or it's Sabbath here, but it's Sunday there. Okay, now we got an interesting issue. The interesting issue is, what day are you going to worship on? Are you going to worship on the same day you used to worship, which is Sunday, for you, but it's Saturday across the road? Or are you going to worship on the Saturday when it's Friday over there? Okay? So, what happened? The U.S. Samoa didn't change anything. They just stayed the same. But the Samoa nation, the Adventists had to make a decision. And what did the conference decide? We're going to worship on Sunday. So, the Adventists are going to worship on Sunday with all the Catholics and evangelicals. Well, some Adventists said, no, there's something wrong about this. It's the first day of the week here now. I know, but it's the same day we used to worship on before, and right across the river there, across the ocean, a few miles, it's still Saturday. No, we're going to worship not on Sunday, we're going to worship yesterday. So they started worshiping on their Saturday, which was Friday next door, but at least it's Saturday here, right? And immediately, the General Conference legal department was contacted to come down and close down those churches. The legal department is not anything to play with. My division president said, don't ever fight with those guys. They're a bunch of attack dogs. They don't think like Christian lawyers. They think like attack dogs, wolves. They got a big budget, and they'll do whatever they have to do. So they packed their suitcases, and all the lawyers went to Samoa to close down those churches legally that were worshiping on the seventh day. Okay? You understand the picture. Well, one phone call to the Free Seventh Adventist Church, and they immediately put a name free in front of their name. The lawyers got there, they saw the word free, they packed their bags, and they bought a ticket back to Washington. Because if you belong to the Free Seventh Adventist Church, there's nothing they can do about it. So they continued to worship on Saturday. Eventually, after several years, the Adventist Conference decided to join them and worship on Saturday instead of Sunday. There was too much pressure. The reason I mention that situation, Sister White had the same problem in her day involving the country of Togo. Togo had the same problem, and Sister White said, don't touch the subject. Let them keep the day that it's in their country. Don't force them to do another day. Let them decide what day is the seventh day for them, and let them keep it. Don't touch it. Leave it alone. So now we're going to talk about what the GC did, in this case, the International Association of Free Seventh Adventists. They got sued to force them to stop using the name. This happened last year. Okay? So they got sued and to force them, but they're grandfathered in. I mean, they have a legal organization, whichever way, like you say, they got it, but they have it, in which case they can prove that for more than 100 years, they've existed with that name. Since when does the GC get to come in and close them down for something that existed before the GC trademarked the name? Right? You understand the situation. So, how to defend yourself? The GC has a lot of money, a lot of top lawyers, deep pockets. It's basically an issue of who has more money and clout to force a little guy to comply. Well, the president of the International Association told me that they decided, I'm sorry, whatever the cost, we have to defend the right. So they hired, it cost $500,000. And they hired the best legal organization with hundreds of lawyers and contacts with every country in the world. They hired them in the United States to defend them. So when the GC found out that they had hired this organization, they they made a motion to the judge to forbid them from using that organization to defend them. You say, it's up to you who defends you. You choose your defense lawyers, right? No. They filed a motion saying, we asked the judge to forbid them to use that organization to defend their position because they knew how good they were. Well, the judge, of course, ruled against that. They can have anybody they want to defend them. So the first thing that they did, they showed that the GC should not copyright a name of a person like Ellen G. White. The word Adventist is used by, I don't remember how many, dozens and dozens, if not 30 or 40 other organizations that use the word Adventist. Not just Seventh-day Adventists, not just Free Seventh-day Adventists. There's a lot of other groups that use it, and they've used it for a long time. So how can you copy the name, the word Adventist, when there are organizations all over? What do you think about Seventh-day Adventists? They never get bothered about the use of the name. As far as I know, they've never been sued. But anyway, here we have this legal case going on, and the judge looked through all the evidence and told the General Conference, it looks to me like you have used fraud to register your names, to trademark. And if we go on with this case, it doesn't look favorable for you. And if this happens this way, we're going to take away your trademarks. Ooh, this is not what the GC expected. For it to backfire, they thought with a lot of clout and money they could steamroll right over the little organization, right? Well, let's settle out of court. Let's quickly take it out of the court and let's settle. And the settlement basically is this. They will never, ever again bother the International Association of Free Seventh-day Adventists regarding the name. And if they do bother them, they will forfeit their legal trademarks, their copyright. So I was thinking to myself, what the devil would really like is to have the use of the name. You know, Seventh-day Adventist is a very important name. The name itself is a message. The name is saying we keep God's commandments and we are expecting and announcing the imminent coming of Jesus Christ. But if the corporation gets control of that name and nobody else can use it, and then we decide to keep Sunday, then what do? Because they will. I mean, they won't overtly say that, but they'll say, let's not worship on seventh day. We know it's the right day, but let's just go over here. But you can receive the mark of the beast in your hand, not in your forehead. We know the seventh day is the right day, so it's not on my forehead. But we're still going to keep Sunday because we don't want to have the complications of not buying or selling or losing our properties. And so in Mexico, there's an interesting situation. In Mexico, when I first went to work there, what year was that about? 1985? 86? Every single church belonging to every single denomination had a plaque on it that said, property of the Mexican government. You remember those days. Benito Juarez, the president, he studied seminary in a Catholic seminary. He is the first native Indian that became president. And he said, the Catholic Church wants to own everything. And they use that power to control everything. So we're going to take away all their churches, and legally they're going to belong to the Mexican government. And the Mexican government gives you the right to use the cathedral. And gives the Adventist Church, and the Methodist Church, and the Baptist Church the right to use their churches. Okay, that's the way it was. But the conniving, intelligent branch of the Catholic Church said, we want to reverse this. We want our properties back. How can we do that? Well, I think everybody wants their properties back. Let's get together and form a union of churches, and let's all agree that we will work in brotherhood together, and that we will not criticize each other, and that we will always be in harmony with each other and support each other's different teachings, and therefore we'll petition the government to give us back our properties. They did that. And the Adventist Church was one among the foremost in supporting that. So the Catholic bishops, the Adventist pastors and administrators, and all the evangelicals got together. They went to the government. The government said, well, if you're all going to work together, you're not going to criticize, you're not going to fight, you're not going to have a problem, then we will allow that. They changed that part of the Constitution or amendment, whatever they did. And now every church, they have universities, churches, and everything in the name of their denomination. But what is the cost? You can't distribute great controversies. You can't preach a loud cry. How can you preach a loud cry, Babylon has fallen, when you agreed not to do that? And if you do that, you lose your universities and your churches. You see, it's impossible. You have handcuffed yourself to saying, I will not preach anything against another church. So they can't. In Mexico, it would be legally impossible to preach in a loud cry. And if you do, you lose everything. But in the end, which of us are not going to lose everything anyway? How many of us are going to go to heaven with all our pockets full? None of us. Everything will be taken away. All human courts will take away all rights and properties and everything, right? So if the denomination wants to go to heaven, it's going to have to lose all its properties. And it's not going to do it. It's going to keep its properties until the end. Now, I'm not God to say it won't do it. But the chances of a big ship turning around on a dime, it just doesn't happen. So for the denomination to reverse course would be almost impossible in a short moment. Yes, sister?
It says that the structure would be swept away.
Yeah. It includes the word structure. So what we have is, if the structure is not going to stand firm, God removes its protection. And my wife has a story about a snake. You want to tell the story? Because do you know we're siding up to Rome? You know we're siding up to Rome, right? Yes. And the closer we get to Rome, like the less chance they're going to persecute us. If we get along with them, there's nothing to worry about. So my wife has a story she tells the children, but I think you all are grown children. You can enjoy a story, and it will illustrate what we're doing today.
Okay, you have to use your imagination. This is a little snake, and this will be the little mouse. So I was in Venezuela, and there's a lot of snake bites there. And so one man decided he would kind of become an expert in that. And so he started collecting all these different snakes, and he would make these like cages out of glass so that you could see them. And so he had it open to anybody who wanted to come and learn about the snakes. And that way they would know if they had been bit by a poisonous snake or not. So we went to visit. We had a doctor from, what's the school in Lincoln? Nebraska?
Union College.
Union College, yeah. They have I don't know if they still do, but they had a very nice degree that would help people prepare for, last day advance, helping if there was disasters, how to rescue people and all that kind of thing. So they were doing part of their training down there in Venezuela. So we all went to this house. It was, house, and he had it sectioned off with all of these little cages, you might say. And so we got to this one snake, and he was saying, well, this snake is poisonous. Now it's very similar to this one that's not poisonous, and pointing out the differences. So we got to one cage, and he said, okay, now, oh, you all are fortunate. You're going to see how I feed these snakes. This snake, he hasn't eaten in several days, and so he's quite hungry, so come along with me. So we went marching over here to a room, and he opened the door, and there was like a wall, and we looked over the wall, and here's all these little white mice running here and there, and so he just reached over, and he picked up a little mouse like this, and the poor little mouse just started he said, come on. And so he went over to where the snake was, and he dropped that poor little mouse right into that cage. I said, oh my, what's going to happen? And that poor little mouse was running here and there, just here and there. Whoops, I got mixed up. This is going to be the snake. This is the mouse. And that snake just sat there, and it was just looking. It ran over there, you know, just like that. But the snake wasn't moving. Just his head would move a little bit. And that poor little mouse, till it was just exhausted. And finally, it was just, and then I couldn't believe what happened. That little mouse went right up to the snake. And it was right beside the snake. And that snake was looking down at it, and I thought, little mouse, that's a very dangerous place to be. You really shouldn't be there. But that little mouse didn't understand a word I was saying. And then that little mouse started kind of calming down, and then it decided it would just kind of prune itself, and so it was licking its little paw and cleaning its ears, and then licking its little paw and its little tail. And all the time, that snake was getting closer and closer and closer. And that little mouse was totally oblivious to what was happening. And all of a sudden, that snake went, chook, and he grabbed that little mouse, and that poor little mouse was going, and his little tail was just waggling around, and I was just there. Oh, I could hardly take it. And then that snake, it was a venomous one, and it just started putting its venom right into that little mouse. And the poor little mouse was still going, but it was like that venom was just paralyzing it, and it could no longer move. And then finally, when that little mouse just wasn't moving anymore, the snake opened its jaws and poof, it fell down. And then that snake just opened up its jaws just really big like that, and it picked up that little snake and started swallowing. Mouse. And started swallowing that little mouse. And you just saw it go gulp, gulp, and then all you could see was the little tail. And then one more gulp. And that snake was gone.
The mouse.
Mouse. I think I'm getting too old. I'm going to have to stop telling this story. I'm getting my facts all mixed up here. Well, you know, I went home and I could hardly sleep that night. I just kept seeing that poor little mouse being swallowed alive by that snake. And then I started thinking about that story, and I thought, you know what? The Bible warns us about a snake. It's warned us about it in Genesis and then again in Revelation. And it says we need to watch out. That snake, that is a dragon, and he is so angry with us, and he is just going to make war against us. And yet, I thought to myself, we're like that little mouse where we just go and we cuddle up right to that snake. And then I started thinking about it, and I thought, you know what? Nearly every home that I have been to here in America or even now overseas, they have a snake sitting right in the living room. And everybody's just cuddling up, and they can hardly wait to cuddle up to that snake every day. And they just start filling their mind, and they go, oh, this is innocent. This won't hurt me at all. And they're just watching all this stuff. and they don't know that that snake is just getting closer and closer and closer. And if I was telling the story right now, like I did one time in Europe, I had the little kids right there on the fronts, and I was right there telling him, and all of a sudden I went, tink! And the little kid went, wah! And then I felt really badly. But that is what I'm trying to warn the people. Please be very, very careful. Now it's not just a TV in the living room. It's all these cell phones that are just... You are such a little cutie. This little thing? Yeah, it's recording what I'm saying. But yeah, even us adults, we've got to be super careful, knowing that we have an enemy that's ready to pounce on us. So let's keep our eyes on Jesus instead every moment.
I know you like that story. Well, when we cuddle up to Rome, many of our pastors and ex-union presidents say, Rome has changed. Rome has changed. They're not the same anymore. But by saying that, they ignore the spirit of prophecy and the clear Bible teachings that Rome has not changed. Not only that, they are responsible and become partners with Rome in the martyrdom of 30 to 50 million. Because when you say Rome has changed, they're different now, and yet Rome says we don't change. You become partly responsible and accomplice. And what's about to happen is the denomination is cuddling up to the snake saying, we're protected. They're going to treat us nicely. Satan hates the Seventh-day Adventist message and the people and the organization. But he's willing to draw them closer and closer and closer until a snake bites. One of these days, the structure will get hit with a broadside. Bam! What happened? I thought they were our friends. They never were your friends. Satan never liked you. And you're going to get a broadside one of these days, and then we'll find out. But it won't be God's fault. He's told us clearly. We just ignored his advice. No, that's not a device. That's a good question people ask themselves. A lot of my answer, I was just interviewed by Pastor James. I don't know if some of you know Pastor James, a black pastor that interviews. He called me a couple weeks ago while I was in a dental chair, and I said, the doctor gave me permission to answer the phone, but if you'll just call me in another week, I'll be in the States. So he called, he scheduled an appointment, and I think it was last weekend, we had the interview, 2.5 hours. Turned out to be long, and he wanted to do another one this week. I said, no, I'm in the middle of construction, we'll do another one later. But he asked me that question, or should I say one of the viewers asked that question. My answer is, my dad was a retired pastor, head elder of his church in Marion, Illinois, for 20 years. He gave him half his tithing, and half he sent to South America. He never had a problem because he was still supporting, but he also supported the work overseas. However, instead of getting involved in actual support, I say, as long as you attend church, if you go to a Seventh-day Adventist church, whichever one you choose, it may be a good one, a bad one, if you're going to go there, you have some responsibility in the support of the church. If you don't want to support it, don't go there. Now, if you don't go to a Seventh-day Adventist church, don't give your tithes and offerings to the Seventh-day Adventist church. But if you're going to go to a church, don't go there and take the electricity, take the services, take everything and say, I'm not going to support it all. He said, well, that's a very balanced approach. In other words, you have a responsibility if you're going to go to church. If you choose to go to another church, support the church where you go. That doesn't mean all your tithing has to go there. You can still support the work in a mission field or another ministry, but at least don't withdraw all your tithings from the church that you go to, because they have the right to receive support because they're paying the electric bill for you to be there, right? And they're paying the pastor's salary or whatever they pay him. So participate in the support of your home church. If you don't like it, go somewhere else. And then don't give the money to the other one. But if you just label the whole organization as not receiving anything, I would only do that if you don't go to any Seventh-day Adventist church. Some people go to church but don't want to support. So I say, balance it out. If you're going to receive services, assist. But some people just give offerings and don't give tithing. But you have a responsibility to your home church. But the truth is, many people go to church here, but they used to give their tithing to the Michigan conference, which was more conservative than the California conference. But it's between you and God. Tithing is a very personal issue. The church has no business doing what they're doing today. You can't hold office because we checked your records and you're not returning all your tithing to this organization. So that's what they're doing. They're making tithing an issue whether you can participate in church or not. And that's like buying a club membership. So I don't think that's right. It's a very personal, but out of moral responsibility. But then I would say what I said applies. Don't go to church there.
That's right.
So if you're going to go to church there, don't receive services without helping with the cost. But if you say no, that's a fallen church, I can't go there, then don't go there, and don't give your tithing and offering. But I'm not saying don't play the game from both sides, right? So if you really find an organization or church that does preach and does support what you believe, then you can return tithing and offering there. But don't go there and then criticize. Withdraw yourself. People call me and say, "Are you going to the general conference in June?" No. Why? I don't want to get mad. I'll get mad at what decisions they're making. From the pulpit, they'll say, "Brothers and sisters, still support the spirit of prophecy. Get involved. Do everything you can for the church. Please get involved. Do not withdraw yourself." And then you do it, they tell you, close it down, do not preach the spirit of prophecy. So what they say from the pulpit and what really happens is two different things. So I get mad. My wife cries. I don't get cried. She cries. The same secretary that told us to close everything down is up at the pulpits telling us, everybody, Jesus is coming soon. Do everything you can. Really? Then why did you come and tell us to shut everything down? You see, she cried and cried. She walked out. I don't want to deal with that. I'm just not going to go. I have friends there that are going to be there. Yes?
My husband and I went to the religious liberty in this union, and we went to the meeting down in Louisiana for this union, and we learned there's a new strategy. Now the strategy seems to be pacifying the people by giving them religious liberty letters. So their lawyers were there, people were there saying, give them religious liberty letters. So it's after the fact now that they're doing that. And then there were other things that we picked up. Anyways, what was this? Yeah, we've got to reaffirm our vows, but then you get into, well, what do you believe? What are your fundamentals that you believe in have changed? But we noticed that there was and this was a meeting mostly for pastors, but the laymen could go, and it was for religious liberty, but it cost us hundreds of dollars per person to even go. So, pastors didn't have the funds to bring their wives, and they said, don't bring your children. So that meant, we brought our children anyhow, because I didn't think they were going to be mean to me and kick me out. And there were other people there. But anyways, it was just an observation of how their strategies now of teaching their pastors to give religious liberty letters. But then they were talking about how the sports on Sabbath, and they got into sports. That thing lasted like 45 minutes, that conversation. It was pro sports. So then I stood up and I said, well, why are we putting our children in this predicament at such a young age anyhow? Why not fund your children in your church to go to Adventist schools? So it's just a mixed mess. That's my observation.
Yeah, it's really difficult. And when you go down the wrong path, it's really hard to act like you're on the right path. You can simulate it, you can do all kinds of stuff, but they don't really give you religious liberty. It's only a simulation. If there was religious liberty, Pastor Conrad Vine, he's right on. Apologize, we'll forgive you. Just apologize. Say you made a mistake. The members will forgive you. No apologies. We still stand with what we did. So if it happens again, they're going to stand right where they are. And the deeper they go in with the United Nations, the more the New World Order is going to be supported. Dr. Conrad Vine is a brave man, but he's catching it from every direction, and he's trying to walk a middle line, and you can't. No. You don't ask God to forgive you and do it anyway. Now, if it's wrong, it's wrong. We went through it. Thank the Lord. My board stood with us, and we went straight on through the storm, and now we faced it. The iceberg broke. We went right through, and we didn't sink. We still have worldwide work. We're still taking heed, but generally they just don't bother us anymore. We do accept tithing. Yeah, but when I was a member of ASI, I did not accept tithing because I promised. We said no, right? But as soon as they dumped us out of ASI, I said, you just took away our last restriction. We don't need to do that because there's nothing wrong with accepting tithe. We're paying missionaries, we're paying pastors, we're doing evangelism. The union president told me in Bolivia that 80% of all the baptisms in Bolivia come through our television network. So the question is, why should we not accept tithing if we're bringing people into the church? Now, we don't tell them which church to go to. We just preach truth. The problem is the church, they come in, they baptize them. How did you find out about the truth? I was watching Advenir television. Oh. Well, we don't want those kind of members in our church. Because when they come into our church, they want to follow the Bible. And they say God's word is what is not human authority. So I've been told, we don't want your kind of members. You know what? That's not my problem. God says, preach the truth and let the Holy Spirit direct. If you baptize them and you don't want them, you'll have to disfellowship them. But when you do that, you either send them back to hell or they go to another group that is not Seventh-day Adventist and you lose them anyway. So we don't tell people, go to your local Seventh-day Adventist church. We just preach truth. Pretty soon they find out, I'm going to a local Seventh-day, but this is not the same message I'm hearing from television. So they're seeing the difference. So in any case, I know everybody's getting tired. It's been a good afternoon and we've learned a lot. But we're dealing with practical, yes sir, and it has to do with finances.
Absolutely.
Very good, thank you, very astute observation. I have contact with him, and the first sermon he preached that went everywhere, we recorded it. It came from our website. Because everybody else erased it, and we said, no, we're not going to erase it. That message is right on target. Leave it there. And so we left it there, and it went everywhere. Of course, it then got downloaded. But he's doing the right thing and preaching the right message. But he's a little bit. He doesn't want to take on an iceberg head on, but it's not going to get him anywhere. He has to eventually face the iceberg. You can't half face the iceberg. Well, if you want to be a member of ASI, which AFM is, yeah, but the Seventh-day Adventist Church says. Didn't Jesus say that? You say, but God says.
Ellen White worked out of the regular lines. That's the word, regular lines.
Regular lines.
So after 1888, there was big, heavy-hitting meetings, 1901, 1902, 1903. This is the time frame when we start seeing some almost like a parallel church, two churches under the same roof. So that's my observation just in a nutshell. But she, I believe it was from Madison School in Tennessee, and her son, I believe it was her son, who needed some money, and God told her to support his ministry. Go ahead and send him what he needs. God told her this. But don't tell the leading men. She was told this, not to tell the leading men because they would question and you throw all this stuff. And so she went ahead and did that, and it was successful. But this is 1903 is where I see God starts really. That's when Madison came onto the scene, 1904. Okay. 1903, and then 1904 was when Madison came over. But 1903 is when they went back and they said, you know what, just scratch everything. We're just going to go back to our own ways. And so they did, and that's when God started using irregular lines to support the church.
Thank you. Yeah, Dr. Conrad Vine resigned AFM in order to protect the organization. if I'm going to get hit as a head, I don't want my missionaries to suffer. No, but I mean, that part he did was resigning is correct. Because he wanted to protect them, he keep on his own ministry. But what he decides with tithing, I think people are going to let him know what they think, because it's half and half. We have a family member that has been called to lead AFM. What we did when we were members of ASI, we agreed not to accept into Gospel Ministries International any tithing. But people still send you tithing. So no, they send it to you without asking for it. So in order to comply, fortunately, I had a special relationship. I was still ADRA director. And so all my tithing went to the union in the Caribbean Union. And then the union treasurer would pay all the bills for all our missionaries. So when the General Conference called me on it and said, "You're receiving tithing and offering." No, sir. 100% of our tithing that is labeled tithing that comes in goes to the Caribbean Union. "Oh, no, you got to return it to your local conference." Sorry. I said, there's nowhere that says where you got to return it. It says return it to the denomination. And we're choosing to return it to the Caribbean Union, and we have a close working relationship, and we work together. And I said, okay. And I said, if you want to, I'll send you a list of all the organizations that belong to ASI that do receive tithing. No, that's okay. We are. But the thing is, I've worked too long for the denomination, 30 years. I'm not a layperson. So they want to treat you like a layperson doesn't know anything. No, sorry, I know too much. And so if you want me to really, really state it on the line, no. It's okay, leave it alone. So anyway, there's a lot of issues that are issues, but you know what? We don't have to fool with it anymore. They threw us out, now we're free to work. When you're not an employee, you're free to preach. When you don't take a salary, when you take a salary, you need to obey. I'm sorry. I was working at the Caribbean Union and a university, and I said, I have a burden for Guyana. We have an Adventist hospital, but we don't have an aviation program. No church has an aviation program. Can you imagine what we would do with airplanes? We could take doctors and dentists throughout all of the interior. We could build Adventist churches everywhere. I said, I'm a missionary pilot of much experience with the General Conference. I would like to start the aviation program. I want to go to Guyana. If you'll give me permission, I will go there and I will find a pilot, get it started and going. And the union president said, no. I'm scared to death of aviation. You're going to kill somebody. I said, I'm certified by the General Conference. You're not even a pilot. You don't have to take the responsibility. All you have to say is, the General Conference certified him. It's not my fault. And he said, no. I said, okay, I'm an employee. I know when to take orders. The answer is no. It's no. But my contract finishes next year. After I finish my contract, I will resign and I will go do it. I wanted to do it while still being an employee. I wanted to do it with your permission. But if the answer is no, I have to obey. I'm your employee. So I will obey and I won't do it. So I finished my contract. I resigned. I moved to Guyana. Started the aviation program, and its work started spreading everywhere in Guyana. And then the division president, who was a very close friend, said, I'm going to Guyana to see what David is doing. Sounds like really nice things are happening there. So, of course, when a division president comes, the union president has to come too, right? I mean, you don't let a chief officer, when a general shows up, the colonel's at his side, right? Okay, so he came, and the division president said, David, get us a twin-engine airplane and fly us to all of your projects. The union president, he was sitting in the back of the airplane. Man, I'm glad you're a Christian, because if not, I know I'm going to die on this trip. But the division president was going. He had to be there. And so we flew to all the projects, and when he came back, he said, this is God's work. Nobody touches David. Amen. And you know what? I quit getting criticized at that point. I identified 11 Catholic villages, because most everything in Guyana is Anglican because of the English influence. But there are still Catholic villages. And I decided after I got the airplane going to go to those villages and offer services. So I would go there and I would say, where's the village captain, the guy in charge? I am. I have an airplane here. I live in Region 7, Kaiken. All you have to do is call me on my radio. Here's the frequency. If you have a sick person, I'll come. I'll fly them to the hospital for free. You will? Yes. I'm just offering. What else? Nothing. Just call me. So they started calling me. And I would fly over with my airplane. And then I said, do you have a priest in the village? Oh, yes. Call him, please. Excuse me, Father, would you please pray for your church member here? Dear Lord, please bless this kind, very gracious man who's coming to pick up our dear patient, take him to the hospital. And I always had the priest involved. Amen. And he would always pray that God would bless us, right? So how could there be opposition? And I'm taking his church member. Well, guess what? Every village that I went to doing that, the next question, what else can you do for us? You want more? Yes. What if I sent you a Bible worker? Okay. Will you give him a place to stay? Yes. Next question, after about 6 months. If we gave you a plot of land, would you build an Adventist church here? Every village, brothers and sisters, that I targeted has an Adventist church there today. So all you have to do is share God's love. And it opens up doors. And they want more. And the Catholic priest came to me and he said, how come you're sending Bible workers? I said, I was invited. Yeah, but they're teaching the Bible. We don't teach the Bible. We teach them to sing and pray. Why do you have to teach them the Bible? Father, you know very well. Jesus said, you shall know the truth and the truth will set you free. You have to teach the Bible if you want to teach truth. You know what? We would like to meet with you privately. Where? In the Jesuit Center there in Georgetown. No. If you want to meet with me privately, do it under the wing of the airplane. No, we have to meet with you in a private room. No, you think I don't know what Jesuits do? You think I don't know what votes you take to kill and to poison and to rip open? Come on. I said, I'm not just a pilot, you know. And he said, but we want to meet with you. No problem. Come meet under the wing of the airplane. We'll talk in public. And he said, no, it has to be in private. Well, you'll never get me. So what did I started getting? Threatening phone calls saying, you're dead. I mean, they would have killed me if I'd have gone in there. The first 2 Adventist pastors that went to Spain, they were invited for supper at the Catholic priest, and they died that night. So I said, no. So they started threatening my life. And I said, I think you made a mistake. Who are you calling? David Gates, the pilot, the American pilot. No. And you're saying you're going to kill me? I said, you made a mistake. You don't realize I'm already dead. You're dead? Oh, yeah, long time ago, man. When I was born to die. And God healed it. He saved me. And then I had an accident one time, and God saved me. And then this happened, and God saved me. I was hijacked, kidnapped, imprisoned, and God saved me. I was assaulted by gangs twice, and God saved me. You know what? I have nothing to fear. Nobody can kill me. You can't kill me. I'm dead already. I've lived too long. I have nothing to fear. So guess what? Don't bother threatening me. I'm not going to change anything. And you know what? They never did again. That's part of the testimonies I have. Don't be afraid, because if you're running from a dog, they attack.
That's right.
Don't ever turn your back on the dog. They can sense fear, and they attack. If they're going to go after you, turn your face and face them like, what's that song that says face? What? There's a song, a hymn. Stand like the brave. Yeah, stand like the brave, you know, with your face to the foe. So if they threaten you, say, my life is not in your hands. My ministry is not in your hands. My ministry is in God's hands. I want to work together. I would like to work in the right direction. That's the only direction I go. And if we can do it nice together, let's do it. If we can't, I go by. There's 2 plans. We go together, I go by myself. Which one do you want? You want to go with me? Come on. You don't want to go? I go by myself. Thank you, brothers and sisters. It was fun being together. We took advantage of the day. God can't accuse us of wasting the day. God bless you.